Hello and welcome back to the Chaos Standard Podcast. I'm Uncle Flacco and I'm so glad you've joined us here today. That's right, we have the man, the myth, the mango. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Aqua. I don't want to be here. Can I go home now? Flacco has my family in his basement. I I don't know, man.
Well, it's
I
not
won an
my
event
basement. It's
and
no.
they told me to come on the podcast or they'd kill my family. Okay, so help.
Aqua has been doing this longer than I have, these randomized standard formats, and has very consistently been one of, if not the best players. So I'm very much not surprised to see him here today. And we've also just done a lot of hanging out and testing decks together in the past, so it should be a good
You
time.
flatter me. Stop
I,
talking.
I flatter everyone, but but you flatter me as well. So,
Oh,
um, we're going to introduce the format that Aqua won, which was last format. This included Zendikar, Dominaria, Strixhaven, 8th Edition, Rivals of Ixalan, and Ravnica Allegiance, with expressive iteration on the ban list.
I'm so
And
glad that you knew those sets because I could have only told you Rivals and Ravnica Allegiance. I could
I
not remember
wrote
the
them
others in
down
my life.
because I think at least a little bit.
Okay.
Past me thinks.
Yeah, you didn't give me anything to do to prep for this. You just said, "Hey, come on the podcast. It'll be fun." I
Yeah.
said, "Ah, I don't wanna." But I'm just talking. I don't have an outline or anything. I'm just here.
Yeah, you're just here. And I think, from the moment you started actually winning matches during the tournament, you went, oh no, I might actually win this. And then Flack was going to ask me to be on the podcast.
I won my first match with a Merfolk pile that I built on day one of the brewing format and didn't revisit at all until when I had to build a sideboard the day before deck submissions were due. I
Oh,
won my first match. It was not anything close to close, and I went, ah, I'm gonna win this event. This sucks.
well, let's just start there then. Did you have, any other deck ideas, or was it just this Merfolk pile?
It was always just the Merfolk pile. That wasn't for it being really good. I just put it together day one because it was really intuitive because all the pieces came from Rivals with the exception of a mana leak and the mana base. And um, then I completely zoned out on the format for about 3 weeks and came back to a ping from Mason saying uh, deck submissions were due the next day, and I went, ah, fuck. And that was it.
Yeah. I do know also that with Dominaria and Ravnica Allegiance, the first thing that popped into my head was Mono Blue Tempo, since things like Tempest Gin and Quench were in Autumn's deck. And I was wondering if that thought ever crossed your mind.
A little bit. I remembered Autumn was on Siren Storm Tamer, which is a big part of the reason that I didn't want to go mono blue, because that card is really good and not in our format. So I wanted to find some extra staying power, and I think that Merfolk Mistbinder, alongside Mistcloaked Herald, gave the deck a bunch of reach that it lost by losing the other evasive one drop.
Hmm.
It had access to Terramander in this format, which is a thing that I probably would have found if I had spent a little bit longer looking at it, but I was low on instants and sorceries to adapt the Terramander, and I didn't feel like playing literal actual flying men.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I guess one other card that I noticed was really strong and ended up being a really good card in your deck was Merfolk Trickster. Um,
Yes, Merfolk Trickster is, I think, a bigger draw to the Merfolk archetype than Merfolk Mistbinder is, and is the only reason I'm not just running back the same archetype for this format.
yeah, losing that was pretty difficult. I know that we gained the Lord, and I talked about that in the format introduction episode, but um, yeah, being able
Right,
to
Master
flash
Spell
in
Driver.
creatures is extremely strong, and a lot of what gives blue mid range or tempo decks their power.
Yeah, so it also gave the deck a really good matchup into what a lot of the field was, which was green mid-range decks and red aggro decks. My only loss in Swiss was to 502 Som, who was on Goblins. Very solid Goblins deck. It was using Warren Instigator to cheat in Siege King Commander, as, Goblin decks do. Just the average Goblin thing.
Yeah,
But I lost to him in Swiss because I didn't find any tricksters, and I beat him when we rematched again in the finals because I found three tricksters in game two.
yeah. I want to talk about the format in general because I feel like a lot of different decks got stronger in this format compared to last format, but three of the top four decks were just red aggro, and the other one was you, which was not what I was expecting at all.
What were you expecting?
Wilderness reclamation was legal, and
Hmm.
that card was very good, and it did very good things.
I
Um,
think that it might have been a trap in the last one. It felt really slow and like it didn't have a lot of ways to stabilize the game, and so it got preyed upon very hard by the red aggro decks and by this like blue-green aggro Merfolk deck.
yeah, aggro does tend to beat ramp decks pretty hard if the ramp decks are not uh, teched out specifically for it. And, maybe I should have been more teched out for aggro. It's probably part of the reason why I went 0 and 5, 0 and 6. I did not do well. And it was mostly because I could not find a deck that I was happy with without just copying someone else. And
Mhm.
like, maybe I should be copying other people, but I don't know. I want to play my deck.
I mean, that's what I'm doing for this format. I don't have anything that I strongly want to play. I built a couple decks, but nothing looked especially interesting. So
Hmm.
I'm just going to play Huey's exact 75. I think Huey is a very good deck builder, and I am proud to be on his list.
I would be too. Huey did win the first two formats for a reason, and I think a lot of that comes down to good deck building, but he's also a good player, so. Uh, I guess another thing that I noticed with the format was black white was a really good color combination because not only did you have a lot of really good black white cards from Ravnica Allegiance, it being an Orzhov, but you also had a bunch of Silver Quill cards in Strixhaven.
Hmm.
And I think that, there was good fixing, there were good cards, and there was also a lot of good discard. There wasn't great discard, but there was good discard in black and white, so.
I think I actually disagree with that. I think Blackwood was a trap in the last format. I feel like it didn't have a lot of strong answers to the aggro decks. It had access to Moment of Craven, and I believe Cry of the Carnarium, and about nothing else. I think Wrath of God is too far up the curve to beat aggro, especially, and it being worse than Cry in that scenario. I think that it had really good mana, I agree, but I don't think that it actually got that much out of Strixhaven. I think the Silverpool cards are questionable. Like when I think of good cards out of Strixhaven, I think of like Prismari Command and Expressive Iteration, and to a lesser extent, Lorehold Command, I think is really good. But I don't really see there being a lot of good Silverquill cards. There's Vanishing Verse that I can think of, and not a lot else.
Um, so I just pulled up a black white deck that I built. Um, its plan against aggro was to stick a Professor of Symbology or a Poet's Quill, and then go tutor out a pest summoning or an environmental sciences from the sideboard. A lot of those chain together land drops and chain together life gain, and they get you into the late game. where you're playing a bunch of bigger cards that can overwhelm aggro.
Yeah, and
But
that's all well and good,
yeah,
but it doesn't do a lot into turn 1 Goblin Guide, turn 2 Warren Instigator on the play.
yeah. I mean, the nut draws from aggro were really good in that format because of Goblin Guide. Oh yeah, I was gonna ask you about your deck building process. How did you decide which cards you were going to put in your deck?
So I started by deciding on an archetype. In this case, I wanted to find a Curious Obsession deck, because I saw that we had both it and Curiosity. I think that playing a worse version of a good effect as copies like 5 and 6 or 5, 6, and 7 is generally a good way to make your deck more consistent. And so from the conclusion that I wanted to be on Obsession plus Curiosity plus Mana Leak as a core, I looked first at the mono blue build of Tempest Djinn and Terramander, and I decided that it didn't quite do enough of what I wanted. The Merfolk build ended up having, say, more card filtering in like the deeper delete Benthic Biomancer package and uh, card neutral creatures like Silvergill Adept, and the splash was very close to free because of the Scalding Tarn Misty Rainforest Breeding Pool mana base, and it felt more resilient to flooding out.
Yeah, fetches are incredibly strong, especially if you have really good targets for it, like on-colored shocks. Um,
Mhm.
and I also really like the style of deck where you just put a bunch of curiosity effects on one creature, and then you draw a bunch of cards and just pass the turn. I think that it was really good to notice that um, you had all of
Yeah,
those pieces together.
it that style of deck got getting worse because of Merfolk Trickster leaving and other creatures with flash is really relevant for this upcoming format. You can play things like Fairy Duelist, but that card sucks. Don't play Fairy Duelist. Don't put that card in your deck. That,
Yeah,
don't do that. But yeah, like drawing 2 or 3 cards off of your Mistcloak Herald, connecting, and then passing with either Trickster or Mana Leak up was really impactful.
yeah. Um, that's what I think is really good about control decks in general is that you can present your opponent with multiple things and then they get in their head about what you could be holding up. And so they play suboptimally, trying to play around everything, or maybe they play around one thing and then they run into the other thing that they weren't playing around. And your deck did that, but actually killed them in a reasonable amount of time.
Aqua is sleepy, playing Delver in every format since 2020.
Except Legacy. Delver is dead. Long live Delver. Uh,
Um,
were there
Ask
any
me
other?
about my sideboard. Do
Oh
it
yeah.
right now. Yeah, do it.
uh, all right, Aqua. What was in your sideboard?
That's a great question, Flacco. I have no idea. So, the way I deck built is I put together a 60 card main deck, and then I go play some games with it and see if the main deck feels like it has legs, has staying power in the format, is a thing that I would really consider for a tournament. And if it does, I'll build a sideboard after. So when I built the Merfolk deck on day 1 of the format, I only built the main deck. And when Mason pinged near the end of the format that decks were due very soon, I went, ah, fuck. um, and threw together a sideboard without having tested it at all. So my sideboard contained 7 counter spells, only 3 of which were actually ever good.
Mm-hmm.
A playset of Spreading Seas, because in my mind I was concerned about Valakut.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that wasn't really a justifiable choice, I think, and that Valakut sucks, and the Murok deck just goes a lot faster. 3 copies of Into the Royal, which was actually just the best card in the deck. I think I boarded those in every matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a Stormcrow, because I found 14 sideboard cards that I liked and couldn't find a 15th.
You let the Stormcrow player win. Good job, guys.
I boarded it in once. In finals,
Against
actually.
who?
Some. I boarded it in both in the Swiss and in finals.
Oh, that's
I
great.
just wanted a thing that traded with Warren Instigator, man. I don't know.
It,
Like,
it, it does trade with Warren Instigator.
Uh,
No, I like Into the Royal as well. It
yeah, Into the Royal and Blink of an Eye were both in that format, and neither are in this format, and I'm very sad about it.
Yeah. But now we get to argue about whether Remove Soul or Essence Scatter is better.
Oh, that's true. Personally, I think it's still Essence Capture. That card is quite good.
Well, yeah, Essence Capture is good in Mono Blue. That was also a reason why I thought of Mono Blue Tempo, but um, you had good tools in Merfolk, so uh, you ended up making it work out.
Yeah, a really cool synergy that I'm sure Wizards intended when they printed these sets into Standard together, but I just noticed now because I am bad at Magic,
Hmm.
is Benthic Biomancer with the Rivals Merfolk that put counters on things like Jade Bearer and Deep Root Elite. That carried me a lot through the event, and I wasn't really conscious of it during deck building.
Yeah. Um, there are a lot of really cool synergies like that, and I feel like a lot of them come up in Chaos Standard not because they were intentionally put into a standard, but because they weren't supposed to be in a standard together. So,
Hmm.
yeah, just looking out for synergies like that while you're playing or while you're deck building um, can lead to a lot of really cool results. One more question I should ask you. Were there any other players' decks you noticed that you liked a lot during the tournament?
Oh man, I played what 9 matches out of that tournament. I
Some around
played
there.
a lot against goblins and just red deck wins. I played against you on the 80 card solve the equation list that sucked.
Yeah, it was awful. It was a funny idea because it was natural affinity plus pyroclasm, and it would just wipe away all of the lands, and then you just stick a value engine before you do that, and then you
Yeah,
draw
and
out of it. But
it could also break parity on the Pyroclasm with the Immortal Sun, right?
yeah, I got to Immortal Sun, Natural Affinity Pyroclasm Huey for one of my two game wins of the tournament. But
Oh man,
yeah,
that's the real joy.
that
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier the top four was me and 3 variations on red aggro.
hmm.
I got to play against Confused and 502 Som out of those 3 red aggro players. Confused is, I think, the best red deck wins player right now. He's incredible at the deck. I haven't seen him play anything else, but I,
He
if I
tried
was as good
playing.
at one archetype as he
Yeah.
is, I also would not play anything else.
Honestly, yeah. Like I saw him trying to play a vintage deck and it wasn't great, but yeah, his decision making on red deck wins is um
Unmatched.
it really is. It's incredible.
Some had a really interesting goblins list that I liked a lot. I think that in an alternate timeline, I could have seen myself on a very similar list for the event.
Hmm.
And I didn't get to either see Canberra's list or play against him. He was in the other pod. But I think that Canberra is one of the best players on UOL as a whole. I think that Can has a really incredible skill for the game. And I think that if he signs up for a league, he is extremely likely, like 50%, to just make finals. I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever seen Can not top cut a league.
I don't think I have either. But yeah, I would not be surprised to see Can on the podcast at some point for winning.
The
Um,
next time I win, I'm giving Ken my spot. I'm just scooping to him.
yeah, that's fair.
I don't want to
Uh,
come back, man. I hate public speaking. Like I said, you have my family, okay? I'm stuck here.
um, I do want to
My little
mention
brother in your basement.
I do want to mention one other deck. Um, Zed played a really cool black red aggro deck that, or like mid range deck. It topped out at Angrath, but instead of just going like balls to the wall and losing to a Wrath of God, it had a bunch of recursive creatures in it. It had like Gutter Bones and it had Priest of the Forgotten Gods, and it would do like little sack synergies with hasty dudes, and
Very cool.
yeah,
I
I
didn't get
I
the chance to
I
see that.
lost hard to Angrath during our matches. It was
I believe
unbeatable.
that. I built a similar version of the Priest of the Forgotten Gods, Bones like mid-range pile for this format, actually.
Yeah. And if you don't have anything else to say about this format, we should talk about decks for the current format.
Um, Nothing comes to mind. Yeah.
All right. Real quick, the current format is 8th edition, Rivals of Ixalan, Ravnica Legions, M13, and Murders at Karloff Manor with Wilderness Reclamation on the ban list. So,
I wanted to touch on that for a second, actually. Do
yeah.
you have any insight onto why Mason chose to ban Reclamation when it didn't top cut the last event? It seems
So,
like a strong card for sure, but one that is healthy to leave in the format because it didn't have
um,
results.
would you believe that next episode is going to be about that?
Whoa, foreshadowing. Crazy.
Yeah. So, you want to talk about the black red deck that you built? Or black
Uh,
white, isn't it?
it was black white, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was using Priest of Forgotten Gods as an outlet to turn on Spectacle for Dead Revels and Pseudo Spectacle for Gutter Bones, and playing creatures with strong enter the battlefield effects to loop with your Dead Revels, like Just Legion Zealot and Unscrupulous Agent.
Yeah, that deck is so
Um,
cool. I noticed pretty early on as well that both Novice Inspector and Dusk Legion Zealot were cheap creatures that basically replaced themselves.
uh-huh.
And I think that that's a very strong core for a creature-based mid-range pile.
Yeah. There's also access to Unscrupulous Agent and I believe Ravenous Rats as creatures that go even on cards.
Yeah.
It also has the fun synergy of using Escape Tunnel on a Bloodthrone vampire and then hitting them for like 9. And that's the whole deck. That's it. That's all it does.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not playing that deck in this format because it can only play on that axis. It doesn't really do anything else very well.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's fair,
like
but
the other decks.
yeah, it's just
Like
I think it's a very cool deck though.
yeah, it's very cool. It's
Hmm.
fun to play in testing. I don't think that it has much game of actually winning the event.
Yeah. Do you have another deck?
I built another Curious Obsession aggro deck.
Yeah.
Um, I yeah, so we didn't lose Deeper Delete or Jade Bearer with the rotation, but
Hmm.
we did lose Merfolk Trickster. So I think and free access to green mana from fetches. So I think that Merfolk as a tribe got a lot worse. And so instead, I'm triggering my Benthic Biomancer with the Johnny Collar of the Pride.
Oh, that's so nice. And you get no more lies as more copies of Mana Leak.
That's true. I think Mana Leak is the best card in the format, and I'm very excited for it to rotate. I'm
Yeah, that's
only
fair.
playing one copy of No More Lies because I have access to Mana Leak, but
Hmm.
I think that No More Lies will have a really nice time in the sun next form.
Yeah. I like No More Lies because with collecting evidence and other various graveyard synergies, I like being able to exile the card that you counter, but certainly only being in one color is very powerful for Mana Leak.
Hmm.
I think we can just wrap it up if we don't have anything else.
I get to leave
Yeah, you
safe
get
and
to leave.
unharmed. Oh,
Yeah.
I love Flacco.
I love you too. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for being here willingly and without any coercion or blackmail or anything else. It's been wonderful to have you here.
Okay, but be honest. If I didn't willingly come, would you have blackmailed me?
No.
Ah, okay, okay, okay. You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I believe you.
And thank you guys so much for listening. If you have any feedback, you can leave it down in the comments. And as always, if you want to join us, the link to join will be in the description, and we'd love to see you there.
You
Anyways,
should not join. You'll have to play against Canberra.
that's
I
true.
wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
We have good players here. You wouldn't want to join. Anyways, hope to see you next time. Goodbye. Checking, checking. Oh
Yeah.
no, it's only 12 minutes. What?
How long does it have to be?
Maybe a little bit longer than that. Oh, I haven't asked you all the questions yet.
I was planning to be here for about 30. So,
Yeah.
I haven't even, like, hyped up Can yet. Come on, you can't stop the podcast yet.
Alright.